welcome to the deep dive. You're here, I'm guessing, because you're curious about that.
Well, that whirlwind of development we often call the terrific twos.
That period roughly between, say, 24 and 30 months.
Exactly. It's such a fascinating time. Little personalities just really start to bloom, their language takes off, and they start seeing themselves as separate people, really.
Independent beings, yeah. It's huge.
So we've been digging into some source material excerpts from a document called 2yearsold.pdf.
Right, trying to pull out the core insights for everyone.
And our mission today is pretty straightforward. Give you a clear picture of the cognitive, emotional, physical, and social leaps that toddlers are making right around this age.
And maybe offer some practical takeaways too, right? For navigating those everyday moments.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Address some common questions.
It really is a period of incredible growth, and it's all interconnected. That's what's so interesting.
Oh, so?
Well, take language, for example. You mentioned the language explosion. Their vocabulary might jump from, I don't know, 200 words to maybe over 500. Wow, yeah.
And they start putting together like 3 or 4 word sentences using I, me, mine.
The mind phase.
Oh, yes. But it's more than just words. It's showing how they're categorizing their world, making sense of it. Every new word is kind of a new concept they're locking down.
It changes how they interact with everything. And their sense of self, too.
Absolutely. It's fundamental.
And it moves beyond just, naming things. They start actually communicating with purpose. You hear those first little questions like, where go?
Right. They're actively looking for information, trying to figure out cause and effect, even on a basic level.
Which explains why simple puzzles or sorting toys suddenly become so engaging for them.
Exactly. Those cognitive gears are really starting to turn. You can almost see it happening.
And then there's the whole emotional side of things, which is, well, it's expanding just as fast.
Dramatically. They start being able to label basic emotions, happy, mad, sad.
They even start picking up on those feelings in other people, maybe.
A little bit, yeah. Early recognition. And it's important, I think, for listeners to remember that those tantrums, they're often tied to this.
Because they get frustrated.
Totally. They have these huge feelings, these big desires, but their language skills.
Yeah.
Still catching up. So it's hard for them to actually say what's wrong.
Which leads us to pretend to play. This is such a fun state.
It's fantastic and so important.
When they start feeding a doll or, pretending to fix something with a toy hammer, it looks like just playing.
But our source calls it thinking in stories, which is a great way to put it.
It really is. It's like laying the groundwork for understanding how things happen in order sequence.
And cause and effect again, but more complex.
Okay.
And symbolic thought, that idea that this can stand for that.
Super important. And the advice is to just let them lead, right? Even if their little story seems completely random to us.
Yes, let them drive the play. That unstructured, child-led time is where so much learning happens. It's the precursor to more abstract thinking later on.
That makes sense. And you also see their memory getting better around now.
Definitely. They remember people they see often. Routines become familiar. They even start anticipating steps.
Like the classic after bath, we brush teeth. They know what's coming.
They're building those mental timelines, those little sequences of daily life.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. What about physically? They seem to just take off.
Oh, absolutely. Growth motor skills really blossom. They get much more confident running. They're climbing everything.
The monkeys.
Pretty much. And you might start seeing those first attempts at jumping with both feet off the ground.
Ah, the 2-footed jump, a milestone.
It is. And then fine motor skills are developing rapidly, too.
Like turning pages in a board book?
Yeah.
That becomes easier.
Yes, that or stacking a tower. Maybe 6, 8 blocks high now.
Yeah.
Using a spoon or fork better.
Still messy, I imagine.
Oh, for sure. But definitely more accuracy, better hand-eye coordination.
And you might start noticing if they prefer their right or left hand.
You might see the beginnings of a preference emerge, yeah. But the source is clear. It doesn't really solidify until they're older.
Gotcha. So it's still developing.
Right. But all these little fine motor skills, they're building the foundation for things like drawing, eventually writing.
Okay, so pulling all these threads together, the cognitive, emotional, physical, what are some key milestones listeners could, watch for? Or maybe gently encourage?
Well, language-wise, definitely combining words into those short phrases or simple questions. More juice? Where'd Daddy go? Things like that.
Okay. And understanding more too, right?
Big time. Following simple, maybe 2-step instructions, like pick up your teddy and put it in the basket.
That shows real comprehension. What else?
You might see more interest in the potty. maybe staying dry for longer stretches. Not necessarily training yet, but the interest might spark.
And interacting with other kids.
The very beginnings of it,
Hmm.
moving beyond just playing next to each other, parallel play to maybe some brief back and forth or imitation.
Still pretty basic interactions, I guess.
Oh, yeah. But it's a start. And emotionally, maybe attempting to name feelings, like saying, "I mad," or pointing and saying, "you sad."
That's a big leap. And participating in pretend play.
Definitely. Using toys, involving people in their little imaginary scenarios, that's a really positive sign.
Cognitively, you mentioned sorting earlier.
Right, sorting things by simple features, like all the red blocks here, all the blue ones there, or by shape or size, shows their thinking is getting more organized.
And using objects for their intended purpose in play, like a toy brush for hair.
Exactly. Pretending to cook with a toy pan or fix something with a toy screwdriver, it shows they're connecting objects to actions.
Okay, now this naturally brings up the question, what if you're not seeing some of these things? The source mentions potential red flags around 30 months.
Yes, and it's really important to frame these correctly.
How so?
The source emphasizes these are indicators that might suggest, getting a developmental screening. They're not automatically cause for alarm,
Yeah.
just things to be aware of.
Okay, so what are some examples?
Things like not regularly using 2 or 3 word phrases by around 30 months, or not imitating actions or words much.
Okay.
Difficulty following simple directions. Maybe showing very little interest in interacting with other kids or even caregivers.
What about emotionally?
Frequent, really intense meltdowns where the child struggles to recover, even with comfort, or seems inconsolable much of the time.
And physically?
Significant unsteadiness when walking or running, or maybe not climbing or attempting to jump at all by this age.
Right. So these are things, if you notice them consistently, it's worth checking in with a professional.
Exactly. A pediatrician or child development specialist. Early support can make a huge difference if it's needed.
Absolutely. Okay, let's pivot to the positive. What can parents and caregivers actually do to support all this amazing development? The source had some great ideas for tools and activities.
Yeah, starting with imagination.
No, this is the fun stuff. Dress up clothes, right?
Totally. Capes, hats, old scarves, whatever sparks, pretend play, dollhouses, play kitchens, toy tool benches, those kinds of things. Give them props for their stories.
And puppets, animal figures.
Great for bringing characters to life. And never underestimate, blankets and cardboard boxes.
The ultimate open-ended toys. A box can be anything.
Anything. A car, a house, a boat.
And this links back to that thinking in stories idea. It's not just having the props, but encouraging the narrative.
Asking simple questions like, "Oh, what's the dolly doing now?" Or "Where's the car going?" Just gentle prompts.
Again, letting them lead the way, even if it makes no sense to us adults.
That's where the magic happens, cognitively speaking.
Okay, what about language and literacy?
Lots you can do. Reading books is huge, obviously. Maybe books with slightly longer sentences now, or interactive bits like flaps to lift.
Books about feelings, too, maybe.
Excellent idea. And rhyming songs. Poems great for tuning their ears into the sounds of language, which is important for reading later.
Like nursery rhymes and stuff.
Perfect. And simple planning games with real photos, family, pets, foods. Where's grandma? Show me the banana. Helps connect words to the real world.
Good tips. And we should probably touch on the vocabulary range again, because it can vary so much.
Yes, really crucial point. That range, maybe 50 words up to 500 or more, it's broad. Don't get too hung up on the exact number.
It's more about seeing progress and their attempts to communicate.
Exactly. Are they trying? Are they using gestures, sounds, and words? It all counts. And pay attention to their receptive language, too.
What they understand.
Right. Can they follow those directions?
Yeah.
Do they seem to get the gist of what you're saying? That's just as important as how many words they can say.
Makes sense. What about practical life skills? The source mentioned toddler jobs.
Yeah, I love that term. Simple things like helping put napkins on the table or matching socks from the laundry, maybe stirring pancake batter. With help, obviously.
Gives them a sense of competence, right? And responsibility.
Totally. And just involving them in routines. Okay, time to help tidy up the blocks before bath. Fosters cooperation.
Okay, and social emotional learning. How can we support that?
Emotion cards or books can be helpful, visual aids. Look, this face looks happy. Mirror play is great too, making faces together.
So they connect the feeling with the expression.
And using simple scripts yourself. I see you're frustrated because the block tower fell down. naming the feeling for them.
And peer interactions, it's still pretty early days for complex play.
Very early.
Hmm.
It often moves beyond just parallel play now, though. You might see mimicking, maybe claiming someone as my friend, experimenting with social cues.
Which, as the source said, can get a bit messy.
And definitely messy. Sharing is hard. Negotiation is non-existent.
Right.
But it's through these messy interactions that they start learning empathy, patience, very basic turn-taking.
So maybe short, structured playdates are good, where an adult can help guide things a bit.
Yeah, short and sweet is usually best at this age. Low pressure. Having duplicate toys can sometimes help avoid battles, too. Adult modeling is key.
Okay, let's talk about those big emotions again. Tantrums. They seem to peak around now for many kids.
They often do. And it helps to remember why. That gap between what they want and what they can express or regulate. It's huge.
So it's not them being deliberately difficult?
Rarely. It's usually a sign of being overwhelmed or frustrated. And the mine thing. Also developmentally normal.
Part of figuring out, this is me, this is mine.
Exactly. Developing that sense of self. Sharing requires understanding others' perspectives, which is still a way off. And limit testing.
Pushing boundaries.
That's how they learn where the boundaries are. They need to see if the rule is consistent. It's actually a form of learning, even if it feels challenging.
The source had that simple script. I won't let you hit. You can be mad. Let's take a break.
Yes, it's great. Sets the boundary, safety first, validates the feeling, mad is okay, and offers a strategy. Take a break. Clear and calm.
And what about in the heat of a full meltdown? De-escalation.
Co-regulation is the name of the game. Staying calm yourself, easier said than done, I know, and being a soothing presence.
Like helping them breathe.
Yeah, simple breathing games, smell the flower, blow out the candle, using visual charts for feelings after they're calm, grounding techniques, maybe a gentle hug, rocking, a weighted lap pad, if they like that.
And the key is connecting first, teaching later.
Absolutely. In the middle of the storm, they can't learn. They just need to feel safe and understood, contain the behavior, connect with the child. Then you can talk about it when things are calm.
Okay. There are a few other important considerations the source brought up for this age. Toilet learning is a big one.
Always comes up. The key message was readiness over pressure. Look for signs from the child.
Like staying dry longer, noticing they're wet or dirty, maybe asking about the toilet.
Exactly. Interest is a good sign. But you can introduce the idea before formal training books about potties, just talking about it matter-of-factly.
And remembering it's emotional, too, not just physical.
Hugely emotional and relational. Interest might come and go. Regression is totally normal, especially with changes like a new sibling or starting daycare. The relationship comes first. Don't let it become a battleground.
Good advice. Sensory needs were mentioned, too, sometimes getting more intense.
Yes. Those likes and dislikes, textures of food, tags in clothes, loud noises can become more pronounced.
So what helps?
Predictable routines can really help sensory-sensitive kids feel secure, offering lots of acceptable sensory Play-Doh, sand, water, finger paint, and maybe building in sensory breaks if they seem overwhelmed.
Okay. And for caregivers, this is a demanding stage. The source talked about boundaries.
Consistency becomes even more important. Saying no isn't mean. It's necessary for safety and structure. Kids actually feel safer when they know the limits are reliable.
And it's okay for caregivers to feel drained.
Absolutely. Burned out, touched out, tired of narrating every single thing is completely normal. The source validated that. Parenting a 2-year-old is intense. Full stop.
Yeah, that idea of the parenting mental load really resonated. The constant decision-making, the narration, comparing yourself.
It's relentless.
Yeah.
And it's okay to feel overwhelmed by it. Caregivers are processing so much data, emotional, logistical, all day long.
So permission to find shortcuts, take breaks, even just tune out for a minute.
Permission granted. Self-compassion is key. You can't pour from an empty cup. Find what works, lower standards on housework, accept help, build in micro breaks.
Okay. And transitions, often tricky.
Big tantrum trigger.
Yeah.
The source suggested practical tools like visual timers or countdowns. 5 more minutes of playing, then bath time.
Or that first then language.
Yes. First we put on shoes, then we go to the park. Helps them know what to expect. And short, consistent goodbye rituals if separation is tough.
Makes sense. Finally, the source had some reflection questions for caregivers.
Yeah, these were really good prompts for self-awareness. Thinking about what feels heavy versus light in parenting right now.
And what your specific toddler seems to need more or less of. Like more structure or more freedom, more closeness, or a bit more space.
And checking in on your own expectations. Are they realistic for a 2-year-old? And
And
for yourself.
that constant recalibration.
It really is. It's an ongoing process, adapting to their rapid changes.
Okay, so wrapping this up. The terrific twos, it's clear, are just a period of massive, multifaceted growth.
Huge leaps in language, independence, emotional intensity, all happening at once.
And hopefully understanding some of the developmental drivers behind the behaviors makes it all feel a bit more manageable, maybe even more amazing.
Yeah, understanding the why can really shift your perspective and build empathy.
This deep dive, drawing from that 2yearsold.pdf source, aimed to give you that concentrated look at this really fascinating stage.
Hitting the key points.
So maybe a final thought for our listeners to chew on. Thinking about your own 2year-old, where do you see that balance right now between their strong drive for independence and their very real need for structure and connection?
Ooh, good question.
And how might understanding why they test limits or have meltdowns actually change how you respond in those challenging moments? Something to think about. Keep observing your unique child. Keep exploring. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.